There was some news today, the Biden stuff, and I'm just like, I don't care, man. Look, we get it. The Bidens are crooked. They're dirty people. And I started thinking about this. I did a segment at 4 p.m. Jack Posobiec wrote about his old neighborhood when he was a kid and how it's fallen apart and crime-ridden. And then I'm just like, yeah, that's the result. They're actually all symptoms of the same thing, cultural fragmentation. Mm-hmm. I was saying that, you go back, imagine a small town of 3,000 people, and you've got a nice God-fearing white family, a nice God-fearing black family, a nice God-fearing Latino family. My point is, Asian family, they agree culturally and ideologically on their worldview. Race doesn't matter. Their views on morality are all the same. So if one guy loses his job and goes on unemployment, nobody's mad about it. They're like, we got your back, buddy. Don't worry. We'll see you at church on Sunday. And he's like, I'm going to keep trying. I know you guys are there for me. And then eventually finds a job. No one is... when everybody agrees with each other and wants to be part of the same community, they're not looking to exploit each other. They're not looking to commit crimes against each other. They got each other's back. Social programs work. Crime is low. You don't need police. And then I started thinking about what the Biden family represents, and it's just like they are both a symptom of and the cause of. It's like a whirlpool. You get when you have a fractured moral society and people just stop caring. And you get Democrats who are like, I'm voting for this guy simply because I hate you, then the people they end up voting for, like the Bidens, are crime families. And then because you end up with a crime family in government, they end up burning everything to the ground.
He's kind of like not quite an old washed-up politician. He's kind of like an old washed-up politician. Like after 1988, when he was plagiarizing in his presidential run and he had to drop out of the race, he was pretty much laughed at, scorned, and like never taken seriously again. Until all of a sudden, Obama puts him as his VP. He runs. He looks like a doddering old man in 2008. No one took him seriously while he was running against Obama. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I guess now we find out it was the establishment, that it's the DNC. It's like the Democratic Party that selects the running mate. I thought Obama put him in as like, I want an old white guy. I want like a business guy to like represent that business part because I'm the rebel.
Nah, man, you remember they ran it by him, and then Biden had that infamous little script where he was like, we had the first clean, well-spoken black guy, and it's like a fairy. They literally had the place set up, and so it's kind of funny because Tim, you were saying it's just like all the people hate each other and they vote candidates in just to spite other people. Well, then that means Biden is literally just like an embodiment of the hatred and contempt that Americans have for each other. Yeah, you see that in how they govern. They have hatred and contempt for us.
And the way they conduct themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I have never found a reason to write about it, but like Hunter Biden has this illegitimate child who he won't acknowledge, even though he put her mom on the payroll for a while. And like now her mom, who I believe was a stripper, I'm not sure, is like trying to get her daughter to have the Biden last name so that she is, acknowledged, is connected, because it's beneficial to be known in America as a Biden. And to me, like, this is someone who doesn't acknowledge this child. Like, it sounds horrible to saddle your child with the name of a man who doesn't want to acknowledge her, who had another child after, who they bring out for photos. Like, it's
and he's resisting. He's trying to stop the name.
He has asked a judge to not let this happen. Meanwhile, Grandma Jill Biden like brings his toddler son that he had in wedlock with this South African film director. Like, they present themselves as this family and they love the young women and they're so supportive. And then really, on the other hand, like, they don't practice anything they preach. And we see this time and time again, right? Like, no one is perfect, but it's different to say, oh, this is the package we're selling you, America, and please ignore the other stuff, right? It's just corrupt morally.
It's like someone took like all the negative things of like, it's like somebody that does not understand American culture except for the bad things, basically took and distilled all of the worst aspects: drugs, fatherless children, money laundering, corruption, and just like literally just embodied them in the Biden family at that point. Yeah. And that's like literally what we have. So,
but Vogue did a cover of Naomi Biden's wedding, so we should just accept that they are like the beautiful new Americana family. Like, it makes me sad, right? Like, if these, like, Tiffany, Trump, and I'm gonna make this point because I've been thinking about it for weeks and have not had a chance to make it, but Tiffany Trump got married the weekend before Naomi Biden, right? Very similar styles, very lavish wedding, both like from powerful families, but like Naomi Biden's is good and it's representational, even though her family actually has all this scandal and all this weird connection, and they treat each other strangely, and the Trump family, by all accounts, like, is unusual, right? A man who's been divorced 3 times, has all of these kids, like, not super typical. But by all accounts, all of the siblings get along really well. But they're the bad family. They're a representation of negative family politics. Like, it doesn't really make sense.
This is why I did the segment I did at 4 p.m. on my main channel. Normally, because normally what I do every day is I grab like the big story, and I'm like, here's the thing that happened, here's what it means, here's what's going on, here's some other stuff about it. And like the other day I was talking about, Biden scandal, the emails. Apparently, Hunter Biden emails from his laptop suggest he had access to classified information. And it seems like in emails they were directly getting information straight from the White House. So it's a big scandal. Today, there was more information on it that they had raided the Penn Biden Center or whatever. And so there was like the FBI were doing raids on the Bidens for a while now before the midterms, and they weren't telling us. And then I was just like thinking about Chuck Todd. Jim Jordan goes on Meet the Press, and he says, Chuck Todd's like, but Trump had classified documents. And he's like, Trump is the president. And they were guarded by the Secret Service. And they were locked up. And Biden had him sitting in his garage. And then just for tribal reasons, Chuck Todd says, no, like, you can't see it. It's a conspiracy. And it's just like, we get it, those of us of sound mind. Chuck Todd is just saying whatever he has to, because there is a cult of people who don't care what's true. They care that they are right. Mm-hmm. So you can come out and make your argument, and they don't care. Literally don't care. And I'm just thinking about all this, and I'm like, then I saw Jack Posobiec's article about how his neighborhood fell apart. And I'm like, yeah, it's because we have no cultural cohesion. We have no shared moral framework. And so we end up with leaders who are basically on the Titanic, watching the iceberg coming. Right before it hits, they run, grab a whole bunch of silverware, and jump in a lifeboat and just cast off. And instead of actually steering the ship, saving people, or being like a real captain and saying, last person off the ship, or you go down with it, they're off the ship first and then even tell you what happened.
No, worse. They're telling you everything's fine. Don't worry, guys. Go back to the mini bar, get some more drinks, go gamble, just get off the deck.
Mostly peaceful iceberg.
The ship starts, yeah, that's right. The ship starts sinking, starts going up, and people are sliding. Don't worry, this is the slide function. It's fun. Glasses are flying out. People are hanging from the side, and like, everything's still fine.
The ground is flat.
I know.
Don't question
Meanwhile,
it.
there's a second ship that pulled up, funded by the Chinese Communist Party, and they're rowing over, being like, "Don't worry about it, Hunter, get the boat." That's exactly what they're doing. I think a lot of the business dealings Hunter Biden is doing is basically like, these people are running this country into the ground in more ways than one. From neighborhoods falling apart to the tribalistic nature of humans. Of society right now. I'm wondering if their attitude is just like, look, one man's not going to fix this. Yeah. Grab what you can, every man for himself.
I've been thinking about, what were you going to say?
No, I was about to say, it's like a multi-layered hedge, basically. You already know it's going to burn down. So why not extract all the wealth that you can? That way, when it burns down, you're, sitting kind of pretty, looking like royalty. Then you can come back and the ashes are there, and then you can suddenly say, hey, guys, we have money. We can fix this. And then you basically take all the credit, rebuild it. Everybody's ground down and depressed. It's kind of like, Russia post-Soviet collapse, really, where, that's why all the drinking Ruski, sort of... those stereotypes come from, because when the Soviet collapsed, they basically gave the Russian people all these waivers and, things like this, when these people couldn't even feed themselves. And so then basically you had the oligarchs and the American banks basically come over and buy up almost all the industry and, turn Russians into basically slave workers. And then next thing you know, well, it's back, but now the oligarchs run everything and they've already got all the money.
Yeah, I got an idea. If it's all going to come crashing down, go buy some chickens. Buck, man. Because the people who are able to sustain themselves more than others are going to be better off if this is the trend that continues. I do think there's an alternative. And that's why I said we need to make America great again. And I don't know if I'm saying it in the exact same way that all the Trump supporters are saying it, but I imagine probably when Jack Posobiec brings up Pizza Hut when he was a kid, and there's a salad bar, and if you read a book in school, they gave you a free donut, and you got a free, I don't know, there's a bunch of, all I remember was the pizza.
Personal fan pizzas, man.
That's all I remember. Because I remember there was a Pizza Hut next to a Dunkin' Donuts, so I'd get the free pizza, and then when we were leaving, I'd go get a free donut. There was other stuff on it. Like,
it was like drug addiction. Like, they give you the cheese and the high fructose corn syrup and the sauce with your sugar and your donut.
Good old days.
Hey.
But Ian,
you didn't know that we were at war,
Bro, I doubt back then they had all that stuff.
It was like after 92 is when the high fructose started coming in. But we were living in a haze of ignorance at that time.
You know what, though?
Maybe.
the decline of literacy levels, because I know you guys see in the schools how like kids can't even read anymore. It started when they took away the personal pan pieces. That's when it happened.
Because kids don't read books.
Why
we don't read.
Now you see how they're tweeting.
Oh my God, it gives me a headache, bro.
It's all like court stenographer shorthand.
And
Yeah.
and honestly, I grew up with it. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm black. And
What?
so, obviously we have our own kind of like, our own dialect and our own vernacular and stuff.
I assumed you were a white supremacist.
Dude, I know. Did you see those 5 guys though? Jesus Christ, it's not safe for black people anymore, man. These white people out here crazy. But no, bro,
Like white supremacists, man.
Yeah, man.
Dave Chappelle called it.
Dude.
What were you saying? We derailed you.
No.
So you're black. Please continue.
I know. Hierarchy, guys, hierarchy. But but no, it's just sort of funny, when you sort of think about it. I grew up in where like we used our own vernacular and our own dialect when we talked, and it was mainly just because it was shorthand. Certain words we just didn't know how to pronounce. Now you see people out here purposely typing, like purposely misspelling, and like the errors and just the misuse of there and. It gives me palpitations.
Oh, it's hard for me, man. Like, where are all the semicolons? They exist for a reason. It's 2 different subjects in one sentence. There's no comma. Use the semicolon to delineate the 2 subjects.
And I'm going to write you a note, and I'm going to leave it in your room. It's going to have no semicolons and improper punctuation.
I'm going to puke on myself. Hey, I want to tag on what you're saying about the oligarchs earlier, because this has been crossing my mind last night. I'm like, okay, this Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's not Putin. I mean, Putin's one of them. It's the Russian oligarchs that are in charge. It's basically a hyper-capitalist state of oligarchs are running that thing. And it's no wonder they want to conquer a trade port in Sevastopol. They want that trade because it's what hyper-capitalists would do in civilization if you were playing against them and they had a government run by a bunch of uber people just like capitalists. So, but I'm wondering, for the capitalists of the United States, the oligarchs in the United States, if they want to control the world, they would want to ally with the capitalists of Russia against, I would think. Either they're too stupid and they think that really they can beat them in a sort of attrition, or they're intentionally taking us to war to kill off the common man so that, like you said earlier, they could come back and rebuild with all their finances.
That's where you're wrong, kiddo, because these aren't regular capitalists. These are crony capitalists.
Right.
Crony capitalists don't care about free market competition. They just want to fix the game for them to win. Mm-hmm. But, it's funny you bring that up because actually, Russia now, the oligarch problem isn't near as bad as it used to be. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when the IMF came in and they tried to do what was called shock therapy, where you convert a formerly communist nation to a capitalist nation, the oligarchs botched the whole thing on purpose because they wanted to buy all the infrastructure up for cheap. Putin, when he came to power, actually drove most of those oligarchs out of Russia. And guess where they went? Ukraine and to the U.S. So a lot of this anti-Putin sentiment that we see, Putin's, let's call him for what he is. I mean, I'm not saying he's a good guy, but, compared to some of the other Russian leaders, the people of the Russian Federation, he's actually a moderate. I've heard that, and, you can't take my word for the gospel, but a lot of Russians are, pretty frustrated that he pity-patted, with the war, that he had this kind of kid's glove approach with Ukraine to begin with. And then, when they brought in Surovikin or General Armageddon, basically now they're going full scale anyways, and they're just like, why didn't you do that, before? And it's, it's kind of crazy how we have all this anti, Russian rhetoric going anyways, but it's just old oligarchs of the past and, angry, rich boomers with a, war grudge against Russia just want to finish picking the bones clean because, they have all that gas,
All that Cold War brainwash.
Yeah, man. It's coming to roost. So it's crazy.
I'm looking at some of the oligarchs I just went to Wikipedia, Russian oligarchs. We have Arkady Rautenberg, Gennady Timchenko, Alisher Usmanov. Are these names ringing a bell? Peter Avin, Mikhail Prokhorov, Oleg Deripaska. There's 9 of them. Vagot Alekperov, Vladimir Potanin, and Roman Abramovich. He's probably the most famous name-wise. Mm-hmm. Roman Abramovich. I've heard of him before.
What's crazy is the cost of property in Ukraine, because there's no way the average Ukrainian can own property unless you're a coder. So I know people. I mentioned it. I have friends who are Ukrainian, and they'll say that like the average salary is like $400 a month or something like that. And if you want to buy property, the prices are comparable to a property in the United States. It's like $300,000 to buy a studio apartment in the city or something like that. And if you're making $400 a month, you will never buy that. But if you're a developer or coder, you're making $150K per year US while living in Ukraine. You're living like a king. You're over there. So what ends up happening is the way they described it to me, the property is all owned by oligarchs and everyone else has to rent from them. And you can buy it, it's for sale, but only the wealthiest people and foreigners come and actually buy up the property. Ukrainians struggle with it.
So they own nothing, but do they like it?
You know, it's a pretty chill place. They got cabbage, and you can get cabbage and beef and stuff like that. I when I was in Kiev, I was at the Maidan Square. It was awesome. It was a blast. It's a cool place. So it really sucks what's been going on, to be completely honest. Going to little food buffets. I remember when I was there, they had like they had the TV playing with music on it, and then Paris Hilton came on, music video. And then I was like, you guys get Paris Hilton here? My friend was like, of course, we get all the American celebrities. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Paris Hilton music doesn't exist in the United States. Like, we don't listen to it. And you guys do. And that's kind of funny to me. I don't know.
Yeah. I was thinking about this invasion and where there's a lot of like kickback now from my friends that I guess you consider more liberal. They're like, Ukraine is Ukraine. We don't want Ukraine to give up anything. Russians should not be invading. Get out. We'll send American troops to die to keep up. And I'm like, where was your voice when the United States invaded Iraq? We're still invading Iraq. The invasion doesn't stop the day after it starts. If we're still at presence there, we're invading in the moment. Why aren't you speaking out against what you can actually control?
A lot of them are too young. A lot of them are too young and just, if I can be crass, too stupid to even understand that. You know, people don't see the whole bigger picture, honestly.
You know, Ian mentioned we were living in ignorance, and someone super chatted saying, this is Christopher Marr saying, Ian, living in a haze of ignorance is called living the dream. But I think what ends up happening is you get a generation that raises their kids in ignorance. Then when they pass on the world to those kids, this is what you get. You get the Bidens. You get people being like Vosh when he came on the show, and I'm like, "What? Isn't the corruption of the Biden family from when he was VP like a concern to you?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know anything about it. I was a little kid. I was in high school when that happened. I didn't pay attention." And I'm like, "Oh, so like the bad guy runs for office 10 years later, and you're just like, I just heard of this guy, you know? You're like, There's a lot of bad guys. You got to look into who they are.
Yeah, I think that's what, I can't say the RNC isn't guilty of this, but definitely DNC, like, that's why they like young voters, because it's like a blank slate.
Yeah,
right?
The DNC.
Yeah, I would say the DNC, like, that's why they often push these get out the vote. I think the RNC too, I think all political parties operate this way, but I think anytime you get this new class of 18-year-olds who have the right to vote, they don't remember 30 years of political history. And especially, it's even ones who are super politically engaged, they just haven't had enough time to learn everything and all the nuances and why this senator doesn't get along with that one and this deal. You can only know so much when you're young, but getting anyone to support your ideology, especially when you buy in with like sort of the name brand. I think of a lot of modern politics like rooting for sports teams, like you don't know why your family supports this team, you just do. I think that is something that some political parties take in stride. They don't have to explain the sins of people they're now electing to president. Things that they did when they were senators mean nothing to people who are new voters.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.